Jews have been, to put it casually, kind of front and center during the last few days and weeks. There's been no shortage of articles in the New York Times and other leading publications about the Jewish issues and people that have somewhat dominated the world stage as we know it. Of course, there's the ever-present issue of Israel and its negotiations with Palestinians, open letters from Middle Eastern leaders that lay the entire blame for the lack of peace in the region at the doorstep of Israel and its government. Our President Obama's remarks regarding Israel to the American people and to the American Israel lobbyist group AIPAC, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent speech to Congress. But there's more than that. Dominic Strauss-Kahn, his arrest and public disgrace, and the undeniable fact that he is an identified Jew and supporter of Israel, and was poised to be perhaps France's first Jewish president. France's Jews who have suffered greatly at the hands of anti-Semitism in the past in their country may be wondering how this incident will reflect on them, just like many did in our country upon the revelation of the crimes of Bernie Madoff. On top of these, anti-Semitic remarks and images seem to crop up with relative frequency in today's world. It's a lot for us, American Reformed Jews who pride ourselves on living in harmony with our neighbors and defining our own Jewishness, to take in. It's a lot for any Jew to take in. With prominent Jewish scoundrels who seem to fulfill in the public eye every stereotype ever made about Jews. Offhand anti-Semitic comments in the air and the complex feelings that many have regarding our beloved Israel. This atmosphere can easily throw us off balance and make us question what it means to be a member of the Jewish people. This week, we, the Jewish people, began a new book of the Torah, the book of Numbers. In Parashat Bamidbar, we learn that the Israelites, having received the Ten Commandments and many other laws and mitzvot at the foot of Mount Sinai, and having now taken responsibility for, shall we say, the big misstep of the golden calf, are organizing themselves for their travels throughout the wilderness. And they do this by taking a census and by receiving a few building directives from God. According to Numbers chapter 2, verse 2, the Israelites shall camp under the banners of their ancestral houses around the tent of meeting at a distance. The text goes on to delineate the exact locations of each of the tribes and where and how they would inhabit the space during their time in the wilderness. It's hard to imagine it, but we have to try to picture this configuration. According to the text, the Israelites move around from place to place throughout the wilderness. But even though they move around, their configuration remains the same. The tent of meeting, the holy space in which Moses speaks to God, and which houses the tablets of the Ten Commandments, is placed at the center of the Israelite camp, and all the tribes of Israel erect their tents around it. To understand the significance of this detail, we must try to imagine the effect of having the tent of meeting, the sanctuary, and the Torah at the center of the camp. As one commentator noted, the tent of meeting was probably the first thing that an Israelite saw when he or she awoke in the morning. And it was probably the last thing he or she saw before going to bed at night. God's presence in the tent, indicated by a pillar of smoke, was probably visible to every individual Israelite family, no matter how far away they were from the tent, because of the direction that their doors faced and on their tents. So we might infer that the camp was structured in this way so as to help the Israelites literally remember their center. By having a constant view of the structure that housed the Torah, the Israelites were always reminded of the purpose of their wandering and the constancy of their principles, regardless of the chaos outside the circle of the camp. Given this illustration in our Torah portion this week, we might ask ourselves, what is our center? How is our community structured and configured? How do we build our camp? Answering such questions can be incredibly difficult at any time, but all the more so at a time like this when we see individuals and collective images of Jews splashed across the front pages of papers and on the news and in the mouths of complete strangers. We are, as one columnist wrote this week, an oversaturated group in terms of attention. That is, the cultural and historical figure of the Jew is burdened with centuries of meanings. So much so that it seems that everyone has an opinion or an image of what a Jewish person looks like or acts like. And sometimes these images dwell below the surface and we're hardly discussed, but at a time like this, they are everywhere. So what do we do? How do we deal with this inundation of imposed images and stereotypes and all this attention? As always, if we look to our Torah, we are presented with an answer. And the answer from this week's Torah portion is this, I believe. Just as our ancestors before us, who camped in the desert for 40 years, constantly moving but never shifting their focus, we must keep Torah at our center. What happens in this sanctuary and in our classrooms and in our homes is the essence of what it means to be Jewish. The outside world does not define us by what it thinks it knows or what one or two of us chooses to do in the public eye or what the government of Israel decides to do. We define ourselves by what is at the center of our community: God, Torah, and each other. We must structure our personal and communal lives so that we're constantly reminded, as the Israelites were, of that center. The land of Israel, however much we love it, is not the center. It is a vehicle to get closer to the center. That's why we love it. Great Jewish leaders are not the center. They are individuals who help elucidate the center for us and demonstrate its power. Anti-Semitism has no bearing on our center. It will come and go. But we modern-day Israelites will build our tents and camps just the same. We stand for tradition. We stand for justice. We affirm a personal encounter with God and celebrate togetherness of a community. We strive for individual improvement. We are committed to remembering and facing our history. And we will be eternally involved in building a community of mitzvot and those values we all strive to embody each and every day. That is what it means to be part of the Jewish people. That is our Torah, our center. If each morning when we open our doors, we gaze upon that vision, and every evening before we go to sleep, we affirm that goal, we will not lose sight of who we are, no matter how blurry or complicated and even dangerous, perhaps, the wilderness is that we find ourselves in. Let us call upon each other and empower each other to do just that, so that we may say about ourselves, and perhaps even others may say about us, words that come from a bit later in the book of Numbers. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. How beautiful, how glorious are our tents and is our community of Israel. Shabbat shalom.